everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, Engineering Quality. So, as we promised, we were going to give you guys a part two about careers in testing. So, we're just going to get right into it.
So we can't really talk about a career in testing without addressing the big question, right? The question that we hear all the time, manual versus automated tester paths. This topic has been the subject of so many articles, discussions, conference presentations.
Yeah,
definitely, Ellie. There is a lot of debate about the distinction between manual and automated testing, and we cannot avoid it if we are going to talk about a career in testing at all. So let's start with our views on the manual versus automated testing debate.
Sounds good, Veronica. I can go first. I think we all have a lot to say about this. So I've had tons of discussions about these terms, right? To me, I think there is no distinction in testing. Testing is testing. What it comes down to is really, do you use any tools to help your testing? So automation is one of the tools that we use on our day-to-day to help us be more productive as testers, right? So I think having a completely distinct career for someone that's a manual tester and an automation tester is a bit of a misnomer. I think that a good tester needs to know how to test regardless of the tool that they use. If they test with the aid of automation, that's great, but that does not make them automation testers. It just makes them testers that use automation in testing. But I think that just because we've been so used to using that term, it's really difficult to decouple the two things. So because the names are so deeply ingrained in our industry now, that's really, really hard to get them decoupled. So when I work with clients, I use these terms, even though I don't agree 100% with the terms, I do use them for ease of communication, because sometimes it takes longer for us to just go down this rabbit hole of talking about, this type of vocabulary. But when I lead teams, when I'm a manager within an organization, I often like to sit down with the team, with the engineering team, with the testing team, and really work on a shared vocabulary that everyone can understand. So then, we work on talking about the distinctions between the different tools that we can use for testing. So in my mind, there is really no manual testers or automation testers, the same way that no one calls me an automated cook when I want to put all my ingredients on an Instapot and turn it on, right? So the Instapot does all the cooking for me, but I'm not an automation, cook. So it's just a tool that I use.
Good one, Ellie. But yes, I agree 100%. Both terms are very important. And the value usually just depends on the specific need of a project. And as you mentioned, ideally, a balanced approach leveraging the necessary tools, and that could be automation or whatever the case is what would ultimately yield the best results. But the good thing is that I've noticed that a lot of people in the industry are trying to move away from this manual testing term, right? Like people are trying to find other ways to talk about the types of testing and not really use manual testing. So we can see that there's a shift happening in the industry, and we just have to play our part to help, educating people or encouraging different terms.
Yeah, it's so true. I completely agree with all that you just said, ladies. It should not be any distinction between manual and automated testers. They are just testers. Come on.
Exactly.
I would like to add that automation, as Ellie mentioned, right, it isn't just writing automation tests, right? It's like automating whatever can be done manually. Automation is about providing tools that help us test more efficiently and focus on what's important instead of doing those routine tasks that takes time out of our day-to-day. For example, automation can be used for data generation, scenarios pre-set up, which usually saving significant time. Also, automation can be used for capturing screenshots to speed up visual UI comparison. There are many tools that provide this right now. For example, like Percy, Apply tools. They just make it so much easier for us to identify, Chromatic too. How could I forget Chromatic? Yes, those tools allow us to quickly see the feedback on what has changed instead of someone else manually going and comparing what changed between the version. It's just not possible with the speed of development that we have nowadays. And also, I would even consider automation being able to report bug faster, right? So, for example, setting up some kind of script that allow you to, like with some kind of keyboard combination of keys, to log bug in Jira, or with Slack bot add bug in Jira. You do not spend time on all of that. And since we are reducing the time that required for the bug to be reported, then it opens up the doors for more people doing that potentially, right? So like it can be product, it can be design, it can be engineer, right? It's more like we are lowering the bar what we need to do to report the bug, right? So what I want to say to conclude this conversation about manual and automation testing is that wherever big or small, a good tester needs to know how to use automation to streamline routine tasks, and so they can have more time to allocate for exploratory and more in-depth testing.
Yeah, I totally agree, Veronica. I think that's one of the main points for me. I think at the core of testing is the types of testing that only us humans can do, right? There is some stuff that we can't automate, that we're never going to be taken over by AI or by any type of automation tool. It's the thinking side of testing, the exploratory side of testing. So the more that we can use other tools, be AI or Selenium or whatever tool that we can use that free us with time to do more exploratory testing, it's definitely worth pursuing. But at the core of testing, I think every tester should really invest into learning how to do proper exploratory testing.
Totally agree. And Veronica, one thing that you touched on that I thought was such a good point to bring up is that it's not just for testing, right? There are so many things that we can do in software development and in the process of shipping things to production across an entire team, right? A lot of times when people hear automation, they think QA or testing or SDET, but there's so much more that you can automate across a team towards the end goal of shipping code to production quicker with as little issues as possible, or to get faster feedback, or whatever the end goal is. So one of the most rewarding parts for us in our careers has been helping others to get where they are today. And we've also been helped, right, for us to get where we are today. And so we want to talk a little bit about some of the ways that we've mentored and guided aspiring testers, and also ways that others have mentored us and guided us to get to where we are today, and continue to mentor and guide us, right? Because it's an ongoing thing. It's not just a one and done. It's ongoing. And so, Veronica, do you want to share some experiences?
Yeah, of course, really. I have two distinct types of mentorship experiences. One with individuals looking to break into testing field, and another with seasoned testers that like seeking for advice on how to advance in their careers. I want to share some of my approaches and my life story, mostly about like new to the field testers. So I had many friends and acquaintances over the years that never worked in IT. They reached out to me to learn about testing, ask about testing, and how to get started. I remember many years ago when I received those inquiries, one of the first things that I did, I created a list of resources that explained what testers do, including examples of day-to-day tasks, along with some approachable articles that like very easy to read for folks who are not, who never worked and never really dealt with IT industry. And I also had a couple of books to recommend. So what I learned throughout like this process that I have seen several people who expressed interest, but they didn't follow through with any self-study at all. And I decided to establish an entry criterion for even talk to people. So I actually asked them to read a short book on testing before we had a conversation. I think we talked about this book before, right? So this is actually the book. This is the book.
The Russian book?
Yeah, this is the Russian book. That book. Testing.com. This is the book. So it has been it has been a week since last conversation, so I forgot. Yes, and what I noticed, I actually was very surprised by how many people chose not to continue. So they were like, okay, it's too hard. I'm not going to do that. To read a book. No, thank you. It's not for me. However, for those who completed the reading, for me, it was more like a sign that they are interested in the topic. And for me, they demonstrated genuine commitment. So I felt really confident to start working with them, mentoring them, because it just like helped me to understand that they are really interested and my effort won't go into the void.
I love that. You're like, you're not going to waste my time if you're not serious.
No. Yes, and I actually have two friends who took this route and they have been successful testers for many years since then. So I'm really proud of them.
Nice.
Yeah, that's really exciting for me that I was able to help folks. And I want to touch base very quickly on mentoring experienced testers. Because when we talk about experienced testers, we do not talk about testing anymore. It's different areas that they usually have questions about, like leadership or time management or effective communication or how to secure buy-in for the new tool or the process that we would like to implement, how to qualify for promotions, how to manage complex multi-team projects that like does not involve much more than only one tester and like might involve like hundreds of developers, how to do that. And also about like how to coordinate testing efforts across various teams and departments. This is usually the question that experienced testing ask. So Ellie, what about you? Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so I think we touched a little bit on our previous episodes about, how we got into testing. And one of the things that I mentioned was the big role that mentoring had played in my career from someone that chose to mentor me when I was just starting and trying to find my path within tech and all of that. So Anne-Marie was someone that was really pivotal in changing my career path. So forever grateful to you, Anne-Marie, if you're listening to this. Hope you are. But since that experience, I've been really trying to pay it forward, right? So every time that I get any request for mentoring, I'm super excited to do it because I know how powerful that can be. When I'm managing people and they mention that they want to excel in their careers, that's one of the main things that I do suggest to them. It's like, let's find someone that you can pair with that can mentor you to get to the next level of your career. I think mentoring provides, not only knowledge share, but also accountability. It's really a great tool for career development. So, Anne-Marie really introduced me to a whole new world of software testing and quality that I had no idea existed literally at that point. So I've since, mentored testers both in the workplace and outside of the workplace as well. Similar to you, Veronica, I eventually started to create a pathway to see who was serious about becoming a better tester. I don't do it before. I like your idea, though. I might start doing that. I don't usually do it before I actually meet with them. But during my first session with them, I assign homework. And I say, once this is done, let me know when we can have a second session, which was more more or less what Anne-Marie did with me as well. So
Nice.
it's like, let's have a session together, discuss what are your goals, what you want to get out of these sessions. And then here's homework for you. And when it's done, you let me know, and then we book a second session then. And similar to you, a lot of people would not, get back to me ever on that second, but the ones that did really progressed a lot from that. So it's super exciting to see their career development on that too. I've also mentored in different settings. I've mentored via the Tech Voices program. I don't do that anymore, but I used to, which is where they pair someone from an underrepresented community who wants to get into conference speaking, especially for testing, but has no experience with someone that has done it before. So we can help them with conference submission, topic choices, speaking preparations, and all of that. That was super exciting to do as well. This is super fulfilling experiences. I used to be much more involved, in mentoring before I had kids. Now, the time is really limited, so I have to be very choiceful with where my energy is actually spent, because I have very limited energy outside of work and kids right now. And one thing that I do, funnel my limited time to is to the Women in Testing Slack that we are a part of. There is some mentoring going on there as well, but at a lesser depth than when you do it offline. So like I said, super fulfilling experiences. And I recommend anyone that's serious about a career in testing to find someone to mentor them. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Ellie. And I like that you actually spread it out of testing, right? As I mentioned, for experienced testers, right? There's so much more. We obtain so many different skills while we were developing ourselves throughout the years. That it's amazing that we can help in different areas. So I have more a clarifying question for you. You mentioned the homework. Is it similar to every individual, or you're trying to craft it to the specific case?
Yes, so I always use that first session to understand what are the objectives that the person wants to achieve with mentoring. So it's usually different person to person. So I might ask them to go and test our website and come back with the test results, or I might ask them to define, what do they think testing is, and then to go really deep into that definition, get out of the surface of that shallow understanding that we have about things. So it's really catered to wherever they want to go. So it's definitely not the same thing for everybody.
That's awesome. I love this personalized approach.
Yeah.
I love it too. So for me, I've had quite a few mentors in my career, and I've also mentored a few people as well, both in testing and not in testing. And so I'll talk a little bit about the people who I have mentored first. So a lot of the folks who I have mentored in the past are people who were direct reports to me, whether full-time employees or I had contractors reporting to me at some point as well. So I always try to mentor them to grow in the field, but also to help them to just become better testers, which ultimately helps us on the team and helps with the project. So that was always fulfilling for me, especially when I see improvement. And then I've had people reach out to me from other teams at the last company that I was at, where they wanted to know, how did you get into this position that you're in? Or how is it that you are able to deliver something to production with X amount of resources? So they see things that I was doing that was helpful to them, and they wanted that mentorship. And I loved that, because I'm the type of person who, if I see someone doing something that I love and that I admire, I am going to reach out and say, hey, do a quick intro and set up a mentorship relationship. So I really enjoyed that and really enjoyed seeing everyone growing. And so I touched on it a little bit with how I have gotten my mentors over the years. And both of you can attest to that, right? Because that is basically how I got to know both of you. I found out about you in the company. I saw what you were doing. I loved what you were doing. I loved the impact that it was having. So different times I reach out to each one of you and say, hey, introduce myself. And I would love to set up a mentorship relationship. And those are some of the things that really helped me to grow in my position and really helped me do the things that I did and accomplish the things that I was able to accomplish without having to worry about, oh my gosh, you're my manager, so if I'm failing in this area, you might hold it against me. It's really good in any field. They say it's good to have a therapist. Well, especially in tech, it's good to have a mentor too. Because one, it's It's like therapy, right? But dealing with
Yeah.
the company and all the issues that you're facing, and just having someone who doesn't have to hold what you're saying against you for the purposes of the job, to really run things by and give you unbiased opinions and constructive criticism and just helpful ways to move forward. It was so helpful for me in my journey and in my growth. Yeah. And then in 2020, right, we saw the surge where everyone wanted to go into IT. I say that with air quotes, or in tech, people who had no experience with the industry or with tech. And so I had so many people from many different backgrounds reaching out to me saying, hey, I want to switch to IT because I want to be able to work remote and I want to be able to make this money and I want this and I want that. And what can I do in IT with my background? So it was very interesting. I had so many people reaching out, and it was fun to really have these mentorship relationships and encourage them and guide them and see how they grew and how they turned out. And just like you guys said, some people followed through and have successful careers in the field while some didn't. However, I didn't implement like this entry criteria or this homework, but I should, and I'll probably do that the next time around because I love that idea. But yeah, it was good. I did try to help a lot of people, and it was very nice to see. So yeah, that's my mentorship journey summarized. Oh, there's one other mentor that I had that I didn't mention. So there's one mentor who, she's the person who got me into the whole testing career, who helped me to get my first job. And she actually mentored me from college because we went to the same college for our undergrad degree. And she was 2 years ahead of me. So she really gave me good advice with majors because we got to choose our major in our third year. So like when I was in first and second year, she gave lots of good mentorship opportunities for me to move forward. And then the college that I went to for my graduate degree, she also went to that college. And so she gave me good advice there as well. So saying all of this to say, whatever phase you are in life, whatever stage you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, mentorship is so important. Mentorship and sponsorship. And at some point, we'll talk more about the importance of having a sponsor, especially as you're growing in your career, right? But it's so important to have mentors, because especially if you're working at a specific company, the mentors can eventually become your sponsors, and you always want to have multiple sponsors in your back pocket. So definitely start networking, finding mentors, and see how you can help to mentor other people. And as they grow, I guarantee you, you'll be just as fulfilled as they are.
Amazing.
Yeah, I thank you very much for sharing, really. I actually want to touch on the point that you mentioned. You mentioned that it's very important to have mentors at any stage of your career. But I feel like some folks who just start and they think, oh, but I need to reach out to someone and find a mentor. Why would they even mentor me? Like, and what I want to do right now is to mention this concept of reversed mentorship, which is about that during mentorship relationship between mentor and mentee, both sides are gaining. So it's like it's
So
not
true.
only mentee who is learning something. Mentor is learning a lot too. It's about perspective. It's about other ideas, or even just the new way of looking at things, right? Um, Diversity. It's so much more that goes into that, and I always feel very fulfilled after my mentorship session, because it's also exchange of energies, right? Like if
Yes.
you feel like the person really getting the momentum out of like our conversations, and if I see the real results after those sessions, it really helps me keep going. I mean, it's like, this is amazing. Like, so it's like we are making the difference, right? So like
Yeah.
reverse mentorship is definitely a thing. And for those of you, our listeners, who think that you're like wasting mentors' time, don't think so, because if someone decided to mentor you, they also have their agenda.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And soft skills too, right? Because as the mentor, you are learning how to become a better mentor, how to become a better leader. And then you mentioned, Veronica, you're learning about new tools. There are a lot of new people coming into the industry, and they probably have completely different opinions on things than we do. And it's good to hear different perspectives and see how some of the new things that they're bringing, how they could change our lives and change the way that we test. So it's so important to get that fresh perspective.
Yeah, I had never heard the term reverse mentorship. I've talked about the symbiotic relationship where both people are gaining from it, but I love that term, Veronica.
Yeah.
Now I have a name for it. So thank you.
Of course. We are learning right now.
There you go. See? Oh, that's amazing. So I think this is a great time for you to pivot and start talking a little bit about the future of testing, right? So we talked about how we got here, how we mentor people to get to the same levels that we are. So testing as a career, we've been talking about that. So will it survive? Where do we think testing is going? We kind of touched a little bit on that on our previous episode, or AI episode.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of AI, like as a career, as a niche in engineering, what does the future hold for our profession?
Yeah, I'm going to start here, Ellie. So I believe we will see even more integration of testing into the development process than we have seen so far.
Yay.
Yes, well, fingers crossed, right? Where else we can go? Only one direction. However, I can confidently say right now that my daily tasks look very different from what they were 10 years ago. So testing definitely has evolved over the 10 years, and in 10 years it will not be the same as it is today. Software is evolving, AI is becoming increasingly prevalent, as we discussed in our last episode. And there are many tools available to automate routine tasks, as you already mentioned, right? Leverage automation in your work. Despite all of this, I don't see really testing as a career disappearing anytime soon. As we mentioned earlier, testers now need to learn tools that assist them with their duties, but it's still critical to have someone who understands the core concept of testing. And a little spoiler, next episode will be about core concepts of testing, so we will talk about this too. Yes, and as well as like risk analysis, and for us to even implement those tools that are available today in a way that benefits teams, not for the sake of implementing tools.
Yeah, it's so true. I agree. Like testing, it will continue to be a strong career choice in the future. So if anyone is out there having second thoughts, like, oh my gosh, should I be a tester? Should I be a software engineer instead? Well, newsflash, software engineers also test, right? So testing will continue to be a needed thing in software development. And obviously it will not look the same as it does today. And as Veronica mentioned, it will continue to evolve, especially with the growth of automation and the recent popularity of AI. But manual testing, and I put that in quotes, right? So manual testing will still be crucial. There's so many things that no matter how great AI becomes, it can never do the same thing that humans can do. And so with regards to exploratory testing or understanding certain contexts to be able to come up with the best strategy, even if we're using AI, someone still has to feed the right data to AI so that you can get, the right testing strategy or whatever it is for your project. So it's still a great career. It will continue to be a great career. And I'm honestly excited to see how it will evolve and what it will look like in the next 10 years, because as Veronica said, it looks completely different now than it did a few years ago. And even with Agile, right, when Agile just came around, it was like the big thing. And, then people are switching the way that they use Agile methodology. So yeah, it will definitely look so much different in the future, even with the reception that we're receiving from C-suite or VPs. Back in the day, there's so many companies that tried to eliminate the dedicated testing roles. And how often do we see them eliminate these positions, and then within the next year, they're rehiring all these positions, right? So it's something that people have thought that they could really cut these roles, and in no time they have to start rehiring because it is still so crucial in a software development team. So there's definitely a future for testing.
Call me biased, but I totally agree. They all have a future. And again, we talked a little bit about this on the AI episode as well, talking about how 20 years ago there was all this fear in the industry when automation tools were really taking off. It's like, okay, now if you're not an automation engineer, testing is done, testing is over. But I'm going to double down on the idea of AI. I think our industry is really going to see a divergence as we move forward with AI, right? AI will continue to evolve. We're going to start using AI as part of testing, as another testing tool for our tool belt. But I think that the more we turn towards those tools, the more the need for a skilled tester is going to increase. Because like you said, Brayoli, we need people not only to feed those models, but we also going to still need people that can do critical thinking. And no machine can do critical thinking. What our brains can do is it can be replaced. So risk management, usability, those types of tests will always need a human doing it. And those who really dedicate their careers to learning the craft of testing, I think they're going to really find a very long career ahead of them. They're going to be sought after by companies because as our test environments get more complex, we're going to need people that are able to see through the complexity and really provide the advice to decision makers to see how the software is progressing and so on.
Yeah. So the day-to-day may change, right? And it will look different, but the need for having that dedicated person solely invested in making sure that the proper testing is happening, regardless of which tools are being utilized, will continue to be a necessity for any team.
100%.
That's true. All right, so we just talked about potential future of career in testing, and I think it's a good segue for us to talk also about common myths and misconceptions about testing as a career and overall, what are the skills testers need nowadays. So let's just debunk some of the common myths and misconceptions right now.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Rapid fire. Just kidding.
Yes. So one major misconception is that testing is easy and anyone can do it. Yeah, you heard it, right?
Haven't we all seen that?
Always.
Yeah. So have you heard of term monkey testing? Right. So for our listeners who don't know what it is, monkey testing, it's usually just clicking buttons and just hoping that everything will work. So that's pretty much the term that is being used for thoughtless clicking the buttons is using the application, right? Without any thought behind that. In reality, though, it's a myth that anyone can do testing. It's not true. And monkey testing is not testing at all. I don't even know what it is, really. It's just the way to spend time if you have some in your hands, probably.
How many times have you seen teams with developers who have the mindset that this team doesn't need a tester, right? The developers can test their own work. And they literally do that. They just test the exact thing that they created in isolation. Mm-hmm. And we all know how that turns out, right?
Yeah, you never can test in isolation. It's not this perfect vacuum environment. The feature doesn't live on its own. It's a part of the bigger ecosystem. Exactly. For sure. And what I want to touch base on is what really are the skills and knowledge that the good testing requires. When it comes to software testing, problem-solving skills are absolutely essential. Testers need to diagnose issues and dig deep to find their root causes. It's not just about identifying problems. It's about thinking creatively to come up with effective strategies and solutions, how to potentially get to the bottom of this and working with product and engineering to get it resolved. The second quality that testers must have is attention to detail. Testers need to spot those annoying defects that could impact the user experience or functionality. It's about more than just finding bugs. It's about making sure that user has a great experience using the system. And let's not forget about patience and persistence.
Oh,
we
yeah.
all we all have been in the situation when like you talk to the development team and they're like, no, it's not a bug, it's a feature. uh, yes.
So many
And
times.
yeah, so many times. And also dealing with complex or intermittent issues often means repeating tests, trying to dig deeper, trying to understand what is the tiny differences between times when like we see the issue and we don't see the issue. It's very challenging, but really necessary part of ensuring software quality, to be patient and really keep on going and getting to the bottom of things.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point, right? About all the skills that are required for testing, because another common myth is that testers are not as skilled as developers or software engineers. And we see that all the time in the way that testers can be treated with regards to certain meetings, or even when you look at or salary. And it's a big myth, right? It is so wrong. There's so many specialized skills as a tester that are needed for proper testing. And yes, the developers have specific skills and the testers also have specific skills. A lot of times they are different, right? But it doesn't mean that one is more skilled than the other, because this kind of myth, it normally undermines the diverse skill set that we bring as testers. And as Veronica mentioned, like the problem solving skills, attention to details, etc. And this trickles up to the C-suite and to hiring and to salaries, and it's just not right and it's not fair, and we definitely need to debunk that myth. We are just as skilled and we should be just as valued.
Yes, I totally agree. And having managed testing teams for a while, I see that that's one of the main roles of a quality engineering manager. Like, it is to help break that particular myth, because it is a myth that really impacts people's career progression, salary, and trying to bring that equality between engineering and testing. It is a really important thing for us to do. So yeah, I totally agree with that, really. Another one for me is that belief, which is really, really strange to me, that more test cases means better testing. So, or, using number of test cases as a metric to see how good of a quality coverage you have. It's a very common question that I get asked as well, as a manager, to say, how many test cases did you run for that release, or did your team run for that release, or how many test cases passed or failed? And I think people that ask those questions are well-meaning people. They want to know the quality of the software. That's what they're really trying to get to, but they don't know what to ask. And unfortunately, as testers, we tend sometimes to just answer those questions without getting to the bottom of what is the problem that they are trying to solve, or what is the real data that they're trying to get to. And then if we get asked those questions and just give an answer, we just continue perpetuating that misconception, right? So I tend to just dig a bit deeper when I get asked. It's a bit of a red flag to me when I get asked by anyone within the team or, the C-suite leadership, when they say number of test cases for the release, or, for the sprint or whatever. It's like, what information are you seeking? And usually they want to know, are we okay to go? Like, can we go to production? Is the release safe? Can we do this? And we can answer those questions in other ways that are much more insightful than providing the number of test cases and number of passed or failed test cases or bugs or whatever it is. So I think we need to be much more diligent as testers to be able to really eloquently answer some of these questions and get to the bottom of what is it that we're really trying to answer there. So yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to add, Ellie, this is a good point, and I feel like those questions are coming from a place of trying to measure quality And it's very hard to measure quality by quantitative metrics, like how many bugs were reported, how many test cases were run. Well, instead of asking those questions, maybe we want to talk about like how many were not run. I don't know. It's just like, it's more like the number doesn't say really nothing. If we talk about quantitative metrics in testing, I would rather use some kind of percentages, right? It's like, so approximately we can say that we covered, let's say, like 20% of functionality of the application, and it was the most critical scenarios, right? Like the most important to the business. We are covering critical scenarios before we release it, right? So like if we talk about in percentages, I feel like it's more meaningful than just a number, 100, 210, I don't know, right? So it's very hard. I think we talked about this, right? That like quality is a very loaded term, and there were so many tries to bring up some metrics to it, and not all metrics are good, and not all metrics really explain and describe what work that has been done and the impact that the testing team has done to the quality of the software.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's a problem in the engineering-wide industry that we first try to provide quantitative metrics. We used to do lines of code, a decade ago, and we realized like that means nothing, So now it's like, trying to ask people like, how many pages does this book have? And by the number of pages, like, oh yeah, if there's more than 100 pages, it must be a good book. Right? It has no meaning. Like the number has no meaning. So it's one data point, but you need to use it, of course, in context. So I totally agree. And I think recently, I feel there has been a lot of big organizations like Google that have been trying to provide better metrics for engineers, to see how productive they are, how they are delivering software, like DORA metrics, for example, which Google put so much time into researching. I just think that we need that for quality, for testing. Like I haven't seen any research done in our industry. Maybe that's what we have to do next. Like we might need to just get together and get something together, because it is something that the business want to know. They want to know the quality of the software, and how do we tell them the quality of the software in a manner that everyone will understand, in a manner that's meaningful. And again, that's one of the other things, in our industry that we talk a lot about, but I haven't seen a massive effort by our leaders and, by us to actually come up with something that it is unified, or something that we can use as the same language, from company to company. But I diverge. We could spend a whole episode on that too.
Yeah, this is great, Ellie and Veronica. Thank you. So I guess let's just segue and let's talk about certificates, education, and training for testers, right? So like, what about certificates and training? Do you think they're worth it?
I have controversial feelings about that. Yeah, I want to talk about one of the most common and well-known certifications in testing, ISTQB. I can say that it can be beneficial, especially for like junior testers who just starting dip their toes into an ocean of software. But I actually, by myself, during my first job in my first company, they made an effort and paid ISTQB certification exams for all testers in the company, including me. So this is how I got mine. I did only foundational level, so the first one. And what I learned about this, and it was 10 years ago, it was more than 10 years ago, it was like 12 probably years ago. What I remember about that, and I remember about reading this big syllabus of all the things, it was like 200 pages probably, I don't know. I don't really remember. I remember it was long. So what I remember about this, it was outdated at that time. This is what I remember for sure. So what I'm getting at, the CQB is outdated, but it also have a benefit to that. And I think the benefit to that is common terminology. So different testers can use the same terms when they talk to each other. So it actually explains functional testing, non-functional testing, all those things like black box, white box. But what I also noticed that I actually have a friend in Canada and they are looking for a job right now, and they asked me to research from my side like some positions in Canada and like for them to give my opinion like what the market looks like. I did some research and I noticed that many companies in Canada require ISTQB certification. I was so surprised by that. I don't know why they're doing that. I didn't really see it much in US, but it seems like it also dependent on how the industry is being built in specific countries. So I would say that in US, I was never asked about ISTQB certification. I do have it in my resume, but when I look at candidates, it's more like nice to have. It's not must have. It's good that they did it, they made an effort, but it doesn't really prove to me that they're a good tester.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've also done foundations and I've done also the manager course for, so I've done 2 ISTQB certifications, and I have a bit more of a critical view of what they're for, really. I didn't find much benefit, but again, I did it after I was a tester already, so I wasn't really new in getting into the industry. But there was not any practical benefit that was directly related to my career. I don't think that I became a better tester or a better test manager by doing any of those 2 courses. They're extremely expensive, so it's really hard, I think, for people to do them. And I think it doesn't really help with diversity, really, when jobs really ask for that, because people cannot afford to do those tests really easily. But not only in Canada, in Australia, it's the same thing. A lot of the jobs, especially if it's on regulated industries like banking or insurance, they do ask for ISTQB. In Australia, it's ASTQB, by the way. But it's a way, I think, for them to just protect themselves and say that we are hiring, professional people that if they get audited or whatever. So it's a baseline there. But I think there are many other ways and better ways to become a better tester. There are a lot of training programs and courses available online that can really help you be a better tester in a current world, that gives you exercises that helps you, to be a better tester. There's community of testers out there, like the Ministry of Testing, for example, that they have a ton of free resources and they have a paid subscription as well. They can get more out of it. But even if you can't afford it, they have a ton of courses online that you can do that are much more, I think, current for us testers as well. So
yeah, so for me, unlike both of you, I am not certified, and that is intentional. So once I got into testing, I thought, oh my gosh, I want to learn more. Let's do more. And so I researched a certification and I looked at some sample exam questions, and compared to the cost and what I saw, I knew 100% that this is not going to be beneficial for me. So I made an intentional decision not to become certified because I 100% thought it was completely unnecessary. And honestly, I low-key judge companies who I see have it as a requirement because I think that they don't understand what they really need. But I've learned so much from the free resources that are out there. Literally, there's so many blogs. There's so many, as Ali mentioned, like the Ministry of Testing, so many testing communities that you can become a part of. There are books that are way less expensive. One of the resources that I have used to learn a lot from in the community is conferences. I really enjoy testing conferences because, one, I learned so much about new things in the industry or old things, and you learn from other people at other companies, real life experiences of how things work for them, how tools work for them, how processes work for them, and you can find ways to really help you with your role. It gives you an opportunity to network and meet other testers and other like-minded people and run ideas by them, and it helps you to grow, it helps them to grow. I strongly recommend to attend even one good conference in your life. It could really change your career as a tester. And then there's so many good books, like I mentioned, out there that are not nearly as expensive as the certification, and that gives you the same amount, if not more, knowledge and, real life experiences, because that's really what you need, is real life context about how you can take these concepts and implement them on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And we can probably share as well some books that are really good too, because there are so many out there. Great. So I think it's a great time for us to jump into our mailbag question. And today's question is one, again, that we hear very often. So it's, I've been working as a manual tester for a few years, and I'm considering transitioning into automated testing. What are the main challenges I should expect, and how can I best prepare for that switch?
This is a great question. It's funny. We just talked about right manual and automation testing, and this is a great question for us to elaborate a little bit more. So, transition from manual to automated testing can be kind of like challenging, and it's a journey. And one of the main challenges you will face is learning to code if you haven't already. So you have to understand the syntax of the language that you're planning to automate on, at least. Right. So automated testing, if we talk about automating testing, right? So automating scenarios, like automating manual scenarios, then it's about writing the script or more like kind of like a tiny programs in programming languages. And the most common languages that are used in testing is Python, Java, and JavaScript. Right now, Kotlin becomes more popular. So I think the first step would be just learn syntax of one of the languages and get comfortable with that, which can be steep or smooth learning curve based on the initial knowledge.
Yeah, 100%. Another challenge that I think you could face is understanding the different frameworks and the tools that are available for automated testing. So there are so many tools out there. I think we've mentioned that before. There are tools like Cypress, Selenium, JUnit, and others that are widely used in the industry. And each has its own learning curve and its own purpose, right? So it's essential to familiarize yourself with these tools and understand how they integrate with your existing testing processes.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, again, just going back to what we were discussing before, also keep in mind that you're not transitioning from one career to another.
Right.
You are really you are a tester, and you are going to be learning a new tool to use. So keep an open mind, because you're going to need to be a good tester to learn automation and to use automation in a productive way as well. But I think, like you both mentioned, you're going to need to practice. You're going to need to find the tool that you want to do. I can speak how I learned how to automate many, many years ago. There is a course called Java for Testers by Alan Richardson, and it was an amazing introduction. And I know that he's updated that course and that book many times over since I've done it. And it's really good because it teaches Java, it teaches great object-oriented programming concepts, at the same time teaching you only the things that are going to be important if you are using Selenium. So I thought that was helpful there. But there are many other courses out there. There is a ton now on Udemy and Code Academy that you can go in and jump in and choose. You can, do practice projects and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and it's very good that you mentioned Java, Ellie. And right now, since we have so many different languages and so many different frameworks, as Ellie mentioned, so you can find right now the course that literally can be taught in the language of your choice and with a framework of your choice. So it's so many different courses. It's just like, yeah, you just need to know what you want.
Yes. And I would even say, don't get too hung up on choosing the perfect combination of framework and language and whatever. Just pick something. I learned that, because what really matters is the concept of the language. And, if the job that you're going to apply for has a different tool that they are using, and as long as you know those concepts, you'll be able to translate them over as well. So
yeah, that's correct. All main programming languages, they are very similar. So if you know the concept and syntax of one, it's much easier to switch to another one. So it's just the first one is the one that is hard to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also don't forget to reach out to the community, right? So like there are many forums, meetups, online groups where you can get support and advice from experienced automation testers. And by that, I mean people who are also using the automation tools before you, right? You can join groups, as we mentioned, like Ministry of Testing, Association for Software Testers, AST, You can attend conferences, network with fellow attendees and speakers, because this is important. Like, networking can provide insights and tips that you might not find in a course or in the books. So it's so important to network, whether it's if you're currently employed within the company that you're employed with, find other people who are using the tools that you are interested in and network with them, ask them questions, pair program with them, whatever the case is. And then if you're not currently working and you're trying to get into the field, find people on LinkedIn. There's so many people too who literally record themselves writing automation code on YouTube for free. So there are lots of free resources there too. So yeah, network.
Yes. Don't be shy. Just go get yourself out there. There are no wrong answers. So before we wrap up, how about we just share quickly some practical tips for those that are aspiring to a career in testing? Veronica, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. My tip would be to always stay curious. I would say be open to try new things and don't be too hard on yourself. Not every approach or tool will suit everyone. You just need to find ones that work for you. Really,
So
what about
true.
you?
Yeah, so for me, I might sound like a broken record when I say this, but network, right? Like, to me, it's like one of the most important tips in any field, in any career, any field that you're in, whether it's testing, whatever the case is. It's so important to network with other like-minded people and grow together. And there's a book, Forget a Mentor, Get a Sponsor. Yeah, so I'll just throw that out there. Forget a mentor, get a sponsor, because they also mentor you, but it's great to have sponsors as well. And then you get these by networking. So it goes back to network.
Amazing. And I'm also going to sound like a broken record here because I'm going to say, go and find a mentor. So it's that important. Okay. I hope everyone got that message now. So amazing. I think we had a great conversation today, and that brings us to the end of today's episode. So thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more insights and discussions on software testing and development. And of course, follow us on Instagram at engineeringquality_podcast and on X, or former Twitter, at engineeringqual. That's engineering QUAL. So see you next time on Engineering Quality Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you found our discussion on a career in testing insightful and inspiring.
Yes, and if you have any questions or topics that you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out to us on our social media channels. And you never know, we could answer your question in the next episode. Yeah. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.